All right. Welcome, everyone. We are back for week 2 of the Metagame Book Club. I am Chris. With us today, we have Kay, we have Trish, and we have a special guest, Tanya. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the title of this week is Children and Watchers. So really quickly, we're going to go over just some rehash some old stuff, just in case we have some people who are just joining us for the first time. So if you're here for the first time, welcome. If you've been here before, just sit back. So I'll go through this really quickly. This is the part of the Metagame Book Club. It runs from May 1st to May 31st. This is part collaboration between Issues Game and Sims Network, as well as this is our big hits for this year. Games as Conveyors of Digital Literacy and Citizenship, Game Narratives and Metagame, Information and Technology Literacy. So basically what we have for the book club, something we did new this year is we're on Reddit. So feel free to go ahead and go to reddit.com/r/ender for educate.edu. So we'll make sure we put that link underneath our video as well once we get it on YouTube. So that's where the discussion is going to be happening. It's going to be over there in Reddit. So first off, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Trish to talk about the characters we've learned so far in the first 3 chapters of the book.
Hello. So first off, we're going to look at Ender. Ender is 6 years old. He is the 3rd child of the Wiggin family, and he's unusual in the fact that most families have been ordered to only have a maximum of 2 children, but he is the 3rd. He has an older brother named Peter that we'll talk about in a moment. He's very afraid of Peter because Peter tends to be a bit of a psychological torturer, and Ender doesn't want to be like Peter. You can sense in Ender at a very early stage that he's afraid of being like Peter, but he doesn't want to be like Peter. Ender does not want to resort to violence. He doesn't want to even think in those terms, but he will if he's pushed in that direction, and he does very early in the book. He can be very compassionate, and he seems to be a catalyst. Things just seem to happen around Ender, and he shows very early on that he is highly brilliant. And every time I read about this and I start thinking about it, I keep going back to the fact he's 6 years old, and I work with 6-year-olds, and I don't know any 6-year-olds like Ender. He is a very special little kid. So, but just what we see so far, you can already see that he's very special, but we don't know what's going to happen with him yet. Moving on to the next slide is his brother, Peter, and he is the eldest of the children. He was identified previously as a potential candidate for the camera that's in Ender, which you've probably already read about. Ender has a camera embedded in his neck that watches everything he does. And his brother had the camera, but it was removed. And they said he failed because he was too cruel. And he seems to enjoy the control he has over his brother and his sister Valentine. And he's particularly incensed and really turns a cruel hand on his brother when he finds out that Ender has been chosen. He plays some very cruel games that have to do with the buggers that are the aliens they're fighting, and he's just very almost sociopathic cruel. And on to the next one. And then we have Valentine. She is the sister. She's the middle child. Where Peter is very cruel and sociopathic, Valentine is the opposite. She's kind. She's compassionate. She loves Ender to pieces. She protects Ender. She will do anything for Ender. She just adores her little brother. And just as Peter was rejected for being too cruel, she was rejected for being too kind. So, in fact, Ender asked the question, am I being picked because I'm half of each? And that's something we're going to have to find out. Next slide.
Actually, I think I'd like to ask Grid. I should say, yes, Tanya. She made a comment here about some stereotyping that was going on with some of the characteristics of the children. So, Tanya, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Mute. Okay. I just wanted to say that I think Ender has what would be today considered some very typically gifted characteristics, which of course all three of these children were gifted, which is why they were selected for the program. But you know, some of the shyness, some of the you know, the tendency to kind of isolate himself, that can be a very general characteristics of some gifted kids, you know, who are thrust into a program where all of a sudden, you know, here they are, they have to do something extraordinary, or they're identified as extraordinary, and they're not quite sure if they really are. You know, why am I? I'm not like him and I'm not like her, so why am I? And like you said, 6 years old. And that is, I was kind of struck at I know we're going to talk about it later, but just the identification of these kids, which is not any different than what we do today. We identify kids at 5 and 6 years old to be in the gifted program, which of course their gifted program was Battle School. So that's it. Just my thoughts.
Well, definitely, and what's interesting with me is I think that all of them there's definitely stereotypes within the book, which is normal for all writing. But what's interesting to me is the interaction between the brothers, because I can remember getting into some serious roughhousing with my brothers. And sometimes I was the object being tossed around, and sometimes I was not. So I think the roughhousing happens, but I agree with Trish's point that Peter does seem to take things a little bit too far than what you see. And we'll go ahead and we'll turn it back to Trish to talk about the parents.
Okay, Ender's parents. What kind of sometimes you get a visual when you're reading a book, and the only visual I can get of Ender's parents is gray, because it's like they're in black and white. It's like they're not really even there. They're sort of transparent. When they say anything, it's very just passive. They just seem to let the kids, they don't seem to have any kind of say in the children's lives at this point. They ask a question here or there, but they're pretty emotionless and just kind of there. Passive observers, yeah. Obviously, though, there's something underneath there that I don't know has been squeezed out, or they just are tamping it down. But they've had 3 children when you're normally allowed to only have 2. And they're secretly religious, because at one point they did say that Ender's mother, I believe, was a Mormon. And Ender even talked about one point where his mom prayed over him at night, which is something that's completely not allowed to do in their society. But then again, when it comes to talking to people in authority or whatever about their children, they're very passive and don't really exhibit any kind of fierceness regarding their children, because parents do tend to be very fierce, whether it's a good fierce or bad fierce. They tend to be fierce about their children.
They're definitely not helicopter parents, the ones I'm used to.
No. Not at all.
Like whenever I read this the first time, And even as I read it again, for me, the thing that probably, you talk about what did you visualize when you read about the parents. To me, what was interesting is I guess I just got faceless mannequins. Is really sort of what popped in my mind about them. They're not very fleshed out at all, and
No,
nor do
that's
they
why.
seem to be very involved at all. It's just sort of
Right,
like, oh, you came home from school. Okay,
right.
you're
It's like
alive
I
for another
said,
day. Yay!
just like I said, they're kind of transparent gray blobs in the story. The kids have color and personality and everything, but the parents are just kind of gray. But at the same time, you have to think back. They do some things that you're kind of going, okay, why wasn't this? This is the same kind of person. I don't know. It's just a very odd way to portray them.
But also seems it could possibly be a facade as well, because they do seem to start emerging. A personality seems to start emerging whenever Ender comes home without the monitor. And there's everyone's like, oh, he washed out, and there seems to be like a sense of relief, and you start seeing like maybe what they actually are like, or what they're hiding starts coming out. And then of course then Graf shows up, which is our next slide.
And then we have Colonel Graff. He is talking with someone. Sometimes it's different someone's, but I think it's this person, Anderson. And I believe it's Anderson who has been the observer. And Anderson fills him in on what Ender's doing. And Graff is obviously searching for a particular type. And he believes that Ender's it. But Ender, it says he goes to extreme lengths, yeah, and he also manipulates. He does what's necessary to try to get the response he wants to get out of Ender. He's the head of the battle school. He believes, he is a true believer. He believes through and through that whether he's telling the truth or whether he's lying, it's all for the good of the cause, which is to have a commander who can beat the aliens. And so he is doing what he believes is necessary to get Ender to the place to where Ender is ready to go to battle school. And that's what we're seeing in the first 3 chapters.
Yeah, and Linda just posted that I think most people would be very guarded in their actions and words when their lives are being recorded, and that is true. They definitely are under surveillance. There is no real room for privacy in Ender's world. So I definitely would agree with Linda's comment there that everyone does seem to have a bit of a mask on, sort of their public persona, because they are being recorded. Unlike today, where everyone's recording themselves, as opposed to being recorded by the state, well, unless you're in the UK. But here in the US, everyone likes to record themselves. So they don't really need to monitor, because we monitor ourselves. All right. Well, thank you, Trish. So we'll go ahead and we'll move on to themes. So the big theme we see is the dystopian future. So we have these buggers, or bugs, these aliens that came, they attacked us. We really we didn't do very well to get to, then we came back due to individual heroics to survive the first invasion and the second, and so it's one of those things where this is this imminent threat. We have this huge threat that they might come back. It's been a while. Nobody knows where they're at. We don't know when they're going to come, but we know they're going to come back. So everything in this entire book is about how do we survive, or how does the world survive, the humans survive the next attack, and will they be prepared for the next attack? They don't know when it's coming. They just know it's not a matter of if it comes, it's a matter of when it comes. And so the whole thing is they're struggling and struggling and struggling. How do we make how do we shape our population to be successful and not die or face extinction the next time they come. And so that's why you see this whole compressed piece where children are now doing adult tasks. You have 6-year-olds who are learning, high level math. They're learning battle tactics. They're learning strategy, and they're doing it from a very, very young age. And you're seeing this extreme weeding out that you're seeing in the school, people failing out kids before they've even become adults or shape their own personalities. They're being weeded out based on just their appearances or their decisions that they make. The whole focus of education, the educational system, which apparently is probably from birth to 6. And by 6 years old, you graduate. You're either going to go to battle school or you're not. And so basically, everything is compressed. They have to know everything as fast as possible to get it there. There's definitely a complete governmental control. And what's interesting about this is that in the book is a setup in the book is that it's really all of the countries in the world have put all their faith and energy and resources into this one unifying organization that is controlling everything. So if you think about this, while we're only hearing about Ender, the reality is this is going on everywhere in Ender's world. This is not just in Ender's little region. This is everybody in the world. They're all competing to become the commanders of tomorrow. And so you see this very dystopian future. You really see people don't have choices. So your choice is either to go on and be successful and become a military person, or you become some sort of support worker that your job is supporting the war effort. And so there really isn't a whole lot for individualization or being able to follow your own dreams. You're really just sort of tied to one of two tracks. We've already talked a little bit about this, the whole control and manipulation. The idea of self isn't really there. You think of yourselves as most of the characters, whenever we're getting that inner monologue, it's how are they helping society? How are they going to help the world, save humanity? You see lots of control by the state. You see the school is really all about streamlined. Schooling has been very streamlined for a specific purpose, which is training and identifying the future military leaders. Very strong military control. You see that with the ability for the state to come in and remove children to determine other people's future. Children who aren't really children. You don't really see that. You don't really see typical what you normally associate childhood behavior in these children and Enders. The adults are also very, very reserved or very, very cautious about what they say and about what their actions show. And then you're left with the whole thing about, do the ends justify the mean? What is the cause and why is it worth it? Of course, in Enders, the cause is survival. They were going to try to survive. We have to survive. Otherwise, if we don't survive, then we're dead. Go ahead. I see Tanya wants to talk a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just, that whole idea of control and manipulation, there were even all these little underlying things, like the way the brothers and sisters control each other, the way they control their parents, so that whole control and manipulation. And I think even Ender, he controls himself. He controls himself from, being more like Peter because he doesn't want to be like his brother. And then and I guess we're going to find out later in the book about more of the manipulation. But even at the very beginning, they start with yes. like the thing that they put in his neck, so that they could watch him, and it's about control. It's about power. It's about power and control, I guess. It's kind of scary, which is what
exactly,
is about.
And that, and the monitor monitors everything. I mean, it monitors. It definitely seems to monitor biologics. It monitors. It's watching around. It's sort of got that first person shooter viewpoint of the world, of what's going on, and keeping people safe. And people have them, and apparently monitors are kept in. Apparently, there's a special meaning that if you have a monitor, it means you're definitely somebody that the state is looking out for and wants to protect, which in some cases is a cause of resentment. And I agree with Tanya. They're talking about the manipulation, because the whole segment there, whenever Ender comes home, and then Peter all of a sudden wants to start playing the game, and the question was, okay, well, how can I let him get some anger out, but not have him go all over everything? So it's one of those things where you're absolutely right. There's this huge amount of control and manipulation, even here early on in the chapters. So that's one of the huge themes that is definitely coming out. And then there's the whole children trained for war. I mean, that's a very, for many people, this is something that is a gut punch for a lot of people, going, should kids really be worrying about the horrors of war, facing the horrors of war, or training, or even thinking about the things that go on with war and training pieces there? So there's some different things that are going on here. Linda has another great comment that talking about the control, manipulation and control, is that it seems to mirror what was happening in Germany during Hitler's control without the technology that they have in the story. So there is that piece of, I think I agree with Linda, the Hitler, she just posted again the Hitler Youth Movement. Yes, I totally agree with that. As far as instead of having children report on their parents, now they don't have to report on their parents because they actually have video and audio of the parents.
Something else, and I know this is going to come up later because I hesitate to bring it up now, but it's something that it just keeps popping up in my mind, is what had they done genetically to produce these kind of children?
Mm-hmm.
Because these are not your typical 6 through 10-year-olds. And I know this is going to come to form more later in the book, but it's just something that's already running through my mind, is that what has been done genetically to get to this point?
Well, exactly, and that's the other piece to this, is there's kind of a eugenics type of thing here, where the first child was too aggressive. The second child was on the opposite end of the spectrum. Was a female and was on the opposite end of the spectrum. So you think about it, you have this continuum between Peter and Valentine. Peter is very, very male, very aggressive, hyper aggressive, the point of possibly being psychotic. And then you have Valentine, who is female, and then really, really is pushed to the opposite end of being so empathetic, that she's very empathetic of what happens to the poor insects if they get crushed. There's that side. So they have these two children. The two children of Ender's family are on the opposite ends, and it seems like, even though it's never spoken about in the first few chapters, and so there's this piece where it's like almost like, well, Ender's kind of like the perfect mix of both of them for this area. But the thing is that, at this point in time, given the technology and so much control over everything else, I would say that there probably is there's definitely genetic manipulation where the government is determining, certain factors about the child. And so it's kind of interesting that, and Trish just said in the comments here that, and you can hop on mic and say that as well, that it seems like they were able to choose the sex at some point. But the thing is that's one of the things that it seems the government has very, very much control over who is their soldiers, and what do we want them to be. And so the next piece we have here, as we sort of touched on earlier, is just the feeling of isolation. What's really interesting about Ender is Ender truly is isolated. I mean, really, if you look at Ender through the chapter so far, we've learned about Ender is really who is his close connections. We talked about you would think his parents would be strongly connected, but there seems to be a very weak tie to the parents. Very, very strongly tied to Valentine. Not really tied very well to Peter. It's Peter. His tie to Peter is more, well, I have to because he's family. I have to put up with him. It's just something that I have to do. At school, he really doesn't have any friends. It goes back to Tanya's comments about the stereotypes of the gifted program, where they already feel isolated because they may not feel they deserve what they're getting, or they don't want the recognition that they're getting. So that's one of the things that you see a lot already coming out in these first 3 chapters. Is Ender is extremely isolated to begin with. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses throughout the rest of the book. But it does seem to be there's lots and lots of guilt. There's lots and lots of stress that these children are under on a very early age. It's very much to put, hey, guess what? The survival of our planet depends on you, and who cares that you're 3? So it's one of those things where it's really interesting to see how anyone can sort of function as what we today see as normal, given all of these expectations, these burdens, this extreme focus. Because what's really interesting to me is it sort of reminded me a lot of some of the stories we hear out of China and out of Southeast Asia, where the children are put under extreme stress to be successful. The tiger mom phenomenon, the focus that you have to be successful, and the kids are always driven and being pushed by their parents to extremes to be successful. In our current school system, this is like a magnified 1,000 times. Now it's no longer the name of our family name. It's up to you to live up to the family name, or to grow the family name. It's now like your job is to save the entire planet. and no, you can't go play. So it's one of those things that's really interesting for this book, is how fast they really sort of suck you into that culture. They suck you into that area that says this is sort of this little petri dish that these individuals are growing up in. And so it's one of those things that makes it interesting as we move forward. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the mic over to Kay, and she will talk about the educational technology that we've seen so far.
Okay, because we said we were going to do this. Look, we're going to look at the things that, I'm not going to call it educational technology, but similar to our educational technology, and things that bring up education theory and pedagogy and things like that are happening. So how do we compare so far? Well, they do have some kind of desk where they can download things, but the really big thing that they have that we do not have, think of it, monitor cams, surgically implanted. They get biological and visual feedback, but think about it, not to their primary instructor, but rather to someone in the military they get to see. And it's part of everything. And while it says here data-driven decision-making, I wouldn't exactly, when I read this, I read that they're doing qualitative research and not quantitative research. Graft and his crew are just diving into every little reason and everything, and they keep wanting to know why. So they keep asking the qualitative questions rather than the data questions. And you can go ahead and go on. And I mean, the thing about it is, are we getting anywhere near there? Well, maybe. I can tell you that yesterday, both Chris and I were doing some reviews for a conference. And one of the things we were reviewing was someone who said, how are you going to do field supervision if you have someone who's out there in the healthcare field, and how are you going to do field supervision, right? And we started to read this, and we just joked, a GoPro cam and a drone, that could take care of it. Now, the person who put in the submission for the conference wasn't talking about that. They were talking about how you do nursing, how do you do even a geologist who's going out into the field, or someone who is doing something allied health. How do you know what's happening? You know, are they writing up like a field report? Well, the thing of it is, these days you could give them a body cam, and and there could be a drone going out to see how they're going ahead and doing. Think about it, is if you're doing some firefighter training, you know, rather than the instructor or the grader having to be exactly there, what if you can just send out a drone to see what's going on? And we're not that far off, because there's a company in Colorado, actually Loveland, Colorado, that's going to give a shout, and I'm going to give a shout out to. It's an ed tech company, and it's called UCU, YOU and then U. And at our college, we're using it for early childhood education. Our students have to do clinicals, and the camera does get set up so that the instructor or the reviewer can go back and look at the video. And I know, and Chris just typed in something there as a reminder, but there's a lot of online proctoring going on right now, where if you're taking an online class, you have to have a webcam just like I have right up here. And as you're taking and Tanya's going to jump in too, but as you're taking the test, this is monitoring to see if there's anything going on in the background. And there's somebody sitting on the other side of the camera most of the time, or they have equipment that does that monitoring. And Tanya, you wanted to jump in?
Right. I just wanted, I mean, you know, years ago, I think we had, for teaching teachers, like what you were talking about, we had two-way mirrors. So a classroom of pre-service teachers would sit in the little room behind the mirror. And the kids at first, you know, they would get up in front of the mirror and make faces because they knew it was there. But after a while, they kind of got used to the fact that this two-way mirror was there. And it was there for the purpose of A, observing the teacher, B, for pre-service teachers to come in and observe what is being done so that they could then emulate it. And I'm sure they're doing it in other states, but in Florida, they had a big Gates grant over in Pinellas County on the west coast of Florida. And they actually mounted cameras in the ceilings of every classroom. And again, this is primarily for the purpose of professional development. Of course, the danger is it's going to be used for evaluation purposes and taken out of context. But it is, you know, we've always done those observations, and now we're just better able to do them with technology.
And I have Linda here at YouTube says the new alt school has cameras installed to use to review how the teacher can improve their instruction. And I agree. I've been seeing that too. But at the same time, I will tell you at my college now, there is written in every syllabus that a student cannot use any kind of recording device unless they get permission of the teacher. Unless they get permission of the teacher first. So that's a bit unusual. So what we have now is some of the things that, and Chris was alluding to this. So I'll go ahead and let him go ahead and take it.
Sure. What you're seeing here is that this is pulled from about privacy issues. And so this is the Information Commission Office from the UK, is that schools are free to use cameras as long as they comply with the Data Protection Act, which states that it must be legitimate, proportionate, and necessary. So yes, this is very well defined, isn't it? Because it defines what's legitimate, what's proportionate, and what is necessary. So this is very, speaking of qualitative, so these are things that could easily be interpreted at different levels when it comes to what might meet the burden when it comes to these three really well defined and spelled out adjectives of what must be met, these criteria. So the other thing is that, question is, would you want to wear a body cam when you teach? I actually don't think I don't think I mind it, because quite honestly, if you're wearing a camera, eventually you just forget you have it on. because if you're doing it every day, so the first couple times it'd be weird, but after that you just get used to it. And I'm just like the person that I'm just like, whatever, I don't care. But I teach online, and so I know I'm always being monitored online anyways. So, you know, online learning, you can see when someone logs on, you can see when someone logs off, you can see how long they spent on a page, you can see how many discussions did they read, how many did they reply to, you can see how long they turn around. So I teach in an online environment, which all of that is easily captured already. So it's one of those things that you can easily see, happening. Now I'll go ahead and let some other people talk.
I've been filmed in the classroom, and you know the national board, when you apply for national board certification, you have to be filmed. Now you can edit it because, I mean, you know, a filming of an hour of something isn't going to be something they're going to watch. So I think they edit it down to 15 minutes. But it is interesting that to get certified for national board, they do require, you know, videotaping in your classroom, which is probably a little bit staged. Whereas what you're talking about here is not, it's just everyday stuff, like just to film it so that you can watch it. I've been filmed and I have found it to be very useful because you turn your back, you don't see, I taught middle school, you turn your back, you don't know what the kids are doing, you know, and it's useful for you later, you know, you can grow as an educator. So I used it for professional development purposes, but I think in Ender's case, they're using it for identification of it. Like they put that thing in his neck so that they could identify his behaviors and everything that he did to determine whether or not he would be useful for their program.
And that's the thing. The thing when I went to go and do some research on this, and I went ahead and I posted the actual articles. If you go to Reddit, you'll be able to see the articles because I put the links there. It's interesting that coming out of the UK, this protest is happening more, and like I said before, with my college, we're not allowing students to record. Students have to get permission first. And it really happened because about 4 or 5 years ago, over the internet, especially YouTube, there was a lot of students who were baiting their instructors and then posting it on YouTube. And it really was, and the policy at my college really was a result of that. And so here's the thing about it. Now, and again, it's because I'm at a college. Not a lot of college professors are comfortable with being recorded. Some of them are starting to record their classes more so they can use them for online. But overall, the kind of thing that you were talking about, Tanya, does not happen either much at the community college or the university level. People usually don't see how their teaching's going. And then this is the next question, because I really had to think about this, and I'm sorry, I know Tanya has already responded in Reddit, but perhaps I will have to say that perhaps Trish is a little different, and Chris just typed in parents over the shoulder, just like like how if you ever see your kids or students, like typing POS, parents over the shoulder, it means that they know that they're being watched. But the article really it was from the New York Times, and it was focused on, in China, this is normal. Well, I can tell you again, because our college has an ECE program, parents can log into the preschool and see their kids all the time. I mean, we're seeing it with pets now. I mean, like the doggy daycares have it. But I'm just wondering, what would it be like if your parents could, if it would have been the same, your classroom, if your parents could have logged in at any time to see if you were being attentive, to see if you were, like you were paying attention, if you were doing, if you were acting correctly, what would that be like?
But see, I think that there, it's great to have this technology, but this the soft skills beyond it have to happen first. And if you're in a true partnership with your parents, which is how it should be, then you're good with it. I mean, these preschools, the reason that they have those cameras on, it isn't to spy on the teachers. It is to give these parents comfort, because they're just so upset about leaving their babies there. They want them, and then they walk out and they look at the television screen and they see my kid's happy, my kid's laughing, my kid's having a good time. Whew, that's a relief. I can go to work now. So if we have a true partnership and establish the soft skill of that partnership, who cares if the camera's there? It's a reassurance, and even a security feature. As a middle school teacher, I've been threatened a few times.
No, I totally understand that there. I would have enjoyed, say, security or a security camera being around at certain student complaints also. So next, and we're just skipping a little bit ahead. Chris talked a little bit about compressed education. Now, for us, current day, we are seeing this in competency-based learning. You may, or it can be abbreviated CBE. You're also seeing it with all the coding boot camps that are showing up. And it's kind of interesting because I'm sure Chris can talk about some of the problems he's now hearing about from workforce industry things when it comes to the compressed education and boot camps, and how not everything's being taught, especially about the soft skills or what to use. But okay, so we're going to dive deep. We're going to look at what we see that's similar to us in Ender. And I'm sorry, I had to do it. I had to go over to DARPA. Okay, our last presentation of this month is going to be by somebody who won one of these DARPA awards. But if you ever want to think sci-fi, if you ever want to think short-time future, and if you ever want your students to get ideas, think of it as a writing prompt for what could be happening into the future, go over to the DARPA website, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. Okay. And they are in Orlando, Florida. So we're doing a shout out to our friend Barbara, who is at the University of Central Florida, who actually does work kind of along this lines. But all I have to say, is it's, TNT, Target Neuroplasticity Training. So this is their latest round of proposals, and they just gave funding to 8 different universities to go ahead and look at this. Okay, now don't read this all unless you really want to. We'll post a slide somewhere. But cognitive skills training. Okay, sounds good. Sounds exactly like what you want in your classroom. But look at the thing underneath it. Precise activation of peripheral nerves that can in turn promote and strengthen neuronal connections in the brain, okay? So this is what I posted up in our Reddit subreddit about stimulating the brain, okay? But I have to say this, cognitive skills training that they're talking about, giving a shock to the brain so people can learn better. My God, all I can say is, games can do that. You don't have to shock the brain. You don't have to use an electrical current, and really engage teaching and project-based learning and student voice. Yeah, and Chris just typed in, games don't need shock collars. No. I mean, for me, all of this that they're talking about can also be done through motivation. But, if we read a little more, they think that this will help reduce the time to train cryptographers and language people. And while they don't say that, that's all military folk, okay? There's military occupational specialties for everything they add on that page. Now, this next one, non-invasive measures to deliver peripheral nerve stimulation that enhances plasticity in the brain responsible for cognitive functions. And if you look at it also at the very end, the White House Brain Initiative. We are going to be looking up the White House Brain Initiative through the next couple of weeks to see exactly what this is. But like I said, when it comes to as close as we can get without us having to go onto a website for a foreign country, is right here. It's DARPA. Okay, now, and then I'm just wrapping up this education here. We've got a little bit of foreshadowing. So what we've heard so far is, all we've heard is that older students train the younger students, and we'll get into it more. All I'm going to say is, if I hadn't read further than the 3rd chapter, I'd be like, oh, this is social constructivism. Oh, the students who already know what to do in a social group teach the younger students, or the newer people, how to go ahead and do that. And then, we've also got that foreshadowing of control and manipulation. So if you didn't see this quote already, it was there at the very end. The Colonel says, there is only one game. And that really foreshadows exactly what's going to happen for us for the next couple chapters. So some discussion questions, and our panelists will jump in if they want to, but don't worry, all of this discussion is going to happen in the subreddit. We even posted the things like last night. Okay. And we're going to ask you to go in there. We don't care if it's provocative, remarkable, sad, etc. What was your favorite quote from the chapters 1 through 3? What stuck in your mind? And it doesn't have to be positive. Okay, just think about what exactly in it stuck in your mind, and go ahead and post to us. And Christina already posted to us asking us if we're going to talk about the author and some of the author's views and his stance on things. We in no way want to limit any kind of discussion on that. We can discuss it in the subreddit. We also have the Google Plus community if people would feel more comfortable posting it over there. The Google Plus community is totally private and nobody else looks at it, and we have loads of control. So even when it gets posted, nobody other than our people see it. So I'll post. So Christina already posted there. I'll post it, but I absolutely do think, whether things are, provocative, remarkable, sad, I believe a lot of the author came from this. and I have and I'm just going to let Chris say what his favorite is.
Sure. One of the things I found interesting is I thought the author did a good job of summarizing the perfect ideal for most parents, I think, and for most children, especially male children in an adolescent male household would be the quote, not enemies, not friends, but brothers, able to live in the same house. Being one of 4 boys, I'm sure my mother, since Mother's Day is coming up, could probably relate to that quote.
Okay, so then the next discussion thing that we can go ahead and do is, and we discussed some of this, but put your thoughts on there. Live streaming from the classroom. What if your parents could have logged in to see what you were doing in school? Think about that. Like what you were doing absolutely all of the time. So these are some of the discussion things that we have. And then so we're going to be wrapping it up now. So any extra quotes or anything else that Tanya or
Now, there was just some people in YouTube that are what thread is it under? Because Linda was asking that she's looking for it in Reddit.
Okay, I'm looking for it too.
It's on my phone.
Yeah, I know.
And it's like it's not on my.
Let me pull it up here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have read it up right here. There's a question. The second item on the subreddit is, what if your parents could have logged in to see you when you were at school? And then the fourth one down is your favorite quote from chapters 1 through 3.
Oh, okay. And then if you go down 2 more, are we going to talk about Orson Scott Card's politics?
Mm-hmm.
And I will go ahead and I will put the link in there to our Google Plus community. So anybody who wants, they'll find it there, and I'll just automatically add. And like I said, that means that it doesn't go public, because here's the thing. We understand what his politics are, and I don't think, well, I can only speak for myself. I definitely do not support his politics. I think that the book is interesting enough when talking about education and simulations and games to take a look at, and to have these discussions about these different things. I mean, think about this. We have children in war. Okay, they want the total annihilation of another race. They have stopped allowing people to have the number of children they want. Religion looks totally oppressed. And Linda, while you said Nazi Germany, I was thinking the Soviet Union, Russia, and the communist bloc, and children reporting on their parents. So everybody, you can go in there, and there's some of the DARPA stuff in there. And if anybody has their own discussion question, go ahead and just post it, because it will totally work for us. Now, we started out really slow, and chapter 1 through 3. It's interesting how it just puts you in there. It doesn't give you lots of background. It just puts you into it there, and you know that Ender's the third, and there's something that happens happening to him that you would never think would happen to a child, nor would you ever want to happen to children. And then, chapter 4 through 9 just takes off. So put in your questions as you want to put in your questions.
Can I give you my quote?
Yes, give me a quote.
Okay, well, I actually had 3, but then...
Okay, go.
But this, I'm only going to give you one of them, and it's the longest one, but it relates to education, and it just so makes me think of what's happening today in our own schools. It is, and this is Graf talking to Ender. Our tests are very good, Ender, but they don't tell us everything. In fact, when it comes down to it, they hardly tell us anything, but they're better than nothing.
And how are we going to aggregate it and compare and give funding if we don't have
I mean, is that like today or what?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say the thing of it is, when he wrote this book in the 80s, there was a lot of technology he did not know about, but
right.
I would say he was able to guess a lot about what was going to stay the same when it comes to people. And again, I think this author's political views probably informed how gray this book is, but there's still a lot to look at and a lot for us to discuss. So we'll be just ending up here. So thank you everyone for sticking around, and we will go ahead and put things up on Reddit. So bye everybody.
Bye.